Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on Enterprise Mobility plus Security. Here today we have Gennaro from one of our partners, Power on Platforms. He'll be presenting the content of the webinar. But before we kick off, I'm just going to quickly run through some quick housekeeping. Just to let you know that during the webinar you will be muted, but if you do have any questions at any time, please submit them in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar so we can go through any of these questions that you might have. The webinar will be recorded and I will be making it available to all of those attending today. And if you do have some time at the end, please could you just fill out our short critique form. That'd be much appreciated. So I'm now going to hand you over to Gennaro, who will be presenting the webinar. Thank you.
Good morning everyone, so Gennaro Miacho here, and today we'll be talking about the modern user and mobile device management, and this covers across the EM+S, so that's the enterprise mobility plus security elements. So just a little bit of an introduction about who's talking to you today. So my name is Gennaro Miacho, and yes, it is an Italian name. Most people either spell it wrong, get it confused, but it's definitely memorable, so it definitely works to my advantage. So I'm one of the cloud management consultants at Power on Platforms, so generally specializing in the Azure space. However, I've touched on things like Office 365, but also concentrating a little bit more on the device management, including the System Center stack, as well as EMS and of course Intune. I'm also a business consultant at Microsoft, so I have my own Microsoft alias and I'm always in and out with the Microsoft team. So this allows me to be up to date on all the new technologies and generally find out information before quite a couple of people do. So always handy in that regard. So a little bit about Power on Platforms just to set the scene. So we're formed of a collection of industry veterans, so generally I say that these are people that have been doing it far too long and enjoy it far too much. However, what we do have is 2 MVPs that work with us, and one of them has actually written the books on System Center. So we're definitely specialized in the System Center stack, but we also specialize in the IT management piece, so whether this be managing things through the System Center stack or things through automation, this is generally our remit. In terms of the cloud automation piece, we've automated a lot of things in Azure, 365, and of course EMS in order to deliver services more faster and more efficiently. So a bit of agenda for today. So we're going to go through the background of user and device management. This pretty much sets the scene as to why we're having this webinar. And we'll also look at the old way versus a couple of new methods that we can look to use in order to make our lives easier and of course make everything more efficient. We'll then go through a couple of problems and the beneficial solutions, as well as going through the 3 key areas of being able to secure your users, secure your devices, and of course secure your data. And to touch on at the end, we will go through the integration points of existing technologies, and I think there's one agenda point that I didn't put on there, which was licensing. So I'm only going to keep the licensing high level because I'm more of a techie, but because of that, I mean, a lot of people have asked what are the different plans, what does the EM+S stack contain. So I'll run through a couple of those key points just to make sure that it's all nice and covered off. So without further ado, let's begin on the background. So the kind of background that we work in today is very fast moving and growing rapidly. I mean, this can be viewed in loads of different areas, but the key areas would be around the Microsoft stack in terms of everything is evolving, everything is updating, technology is constantly changing, and again, that can be looked at just from the Microsoft stack or even something simple like mobile phones nowadays. The minute that you go out to a phone shop and buy a mobile phone, a week later, your mobile phone's out of date, something new has come along. This is the kind of world we now live in, and because of that, we need to always be up to date, and we need to keep ahead of the curve in order to be relatively efficient. In terms of the ways of working, so as we've seen it in the IT world, a lot more users are becoming remote. So I remember way back when, all the time users would be completely office-based. You come into the office, you work in the office, you leave the office, and leave your work at the office. Obviously now, that is very different, where users are more on the road, out and about. There is now a requirement that users have to be remote or have to be mobile, so they can work from everywhere. Another key point is cloud services are on the uprising, so whether this be from a personal perspective or from a commercial and industry perspective. So before smartphones really evolved, everything was pretty much based on local computers, if we take this from a personal perspective. But nowadays we have things like SkyDrive, OneDrive, we have Dropbox, we have things like Spotify. All of these are cloud-based applications that our users are using. Hopefully not in our corporate network, but just to emphasize that users on a personal level are using these cloud services. Now, because these users are using these cloud services and are consuming from the cloud, we ideally need a solution born in the cloud to tackle the issues that these cloud services are causing. Now, when I say issues, I mean a user could install a cloud service on, say, their mobile device or their laptop device and start uploading our company data to their own personal storage space. Now, obviously, to a lot of people, this causes an issue. So again, we do need something to manage this, and again, it has to be born from within the cloud in order to manage the different cloud products. Just to kind of go through what the old way looks like, and probably a lot of you would be familiar with this, that in the, I wouldn't say in the olden times, but in the past, all devices and data used to be within our corporate network, within our perimeter network. And generally, as I said, when a user comes in, they would work in the office and then they would leave the office. They wouldn't have access to any of their actual, any of the actual services or applications. And let's say we're using something like a VPN, which generally causes a little bit of an overhead. But this was predominantly the only way to access your internal resources externally. As for things like mobile devices, users were generally not managed or governed when it comes to mobile devices. So they would either use their personal device to get on their emails or to get onto their corporate applications. Again, these were generally unmanaged, which means data leakage was a lot more common. So what we want to do is pretty much look for a way to kind of evolve this so we have more control, but we don't want to use the old way of having everything internal. We want to allow our users to be able to still work externally, but we also want to have the security that we normally would have internally. So what do we want to achieve? And this is a question that I would ask a lot of my customers, and a lot of my customers would generally come back with the same things that I always hear. We want lower costs or quicker time to value or more functionality. We want less risk on our data. We want easier management. And all of these absolutely are definitely key points that we want to look to achieve. However, the message that I try and put across is a slight bit more different. I look at it from a bit more of the user perspective, which is we want users to be more mobile, and mobile means productive, right? So we want our users to be more mobile, yet we want them to remain secure. So by all means, our users are always going to work on the road, they're always going to work in another office or from home, but the data that they have, we still want that to be secure. And when we achieve this, then we start to see the more functionality and less risk elements start coming into play, because we can allow the users to have more functionality and be able to roam around, but then there's still less risk on the data. So this is really what I want most customers to actually achieve. And the way that we can look to achieve that really is, I suppose in this case, I would break it down into 3 main objectives, and this is effectively what I would normally go through is, first of all, our users need to be mobile. We're not trying to make everything mobile, but we want our user to be mobile. They are, at the end of the day, the people that are going to be consuming our services or our services internally. So we want our users to be mobile, but we do want them secure. We want to keep their credentials secure. We want to keep their identity secure. So in this case, there is a need for an advanced identity management. Aside from the basic, say, Active Directory, we do need something that kind of wraps around that and gives us more advanced functionality. The second point is devices need to be mobile yet secure. So of course mobile devices and smartphones do exist, so devices can be mobile, but we still need them to be secure. We don't want users going out, installing their own apps onto it, installing our company data onto it and being able to control that themselves. We want to take control of that data and the applications that our users are consuming. So from here we can see that there is a clear need for advanced mobile management and mobile application management. Finally, and probably the most important part is our data needs to be somewhat mobile, but definitely secure. So we generally want to keep our data internal, we want to control our data. However, if the users and the devices are external or out and about or remote, we still need that data to leave the organization, but we want to maintain the control over it in order to keep it secure. So from here, there's a clear need for further information protection that feeds into more of the DLP kind of story. So how can we achieve this? So in Microsoft, we have the Microsoft Enterprise Management Suite. I believe it's now called something different, so apologies for the slide not being up to date. It will be the EM+S, so the Enterprise Management Plus Security Suite. And this generally contains the Azure Active Directory Premium, so this is Active Directory in the cloud, but with premium features. And that's for the user identity piece. As for the mobile piece, we have Intune, so this is the mobile device management and MAM management, as well as the Azure RMS, which is the rights management service, which I think is now called Information Protection Service. And this basically governs and controls the data, no matter where it is. So what we'll look in the next section is a couple of features and functionality from each of these 3 points to kind of show you the actual value that this can have for you. So I suppose the first point is what we always want to do is we want to secure our users. And the reason why I believe that this is very important is most exploits to business will happen through leaked and compromised credentials. It's very easy to, well, I don't want to say very easy, but it's very easy to kind of crack into standard users' credentials, considering that they've probably used a basic password or left their password on a sticky note next to their computer. This, I have seen firsthand, has caused so many issues. So this is one of the first things that I think everyone should address. And I think the best way, easiest way, and probably cost-effective way in such a way would be to set up multi-factor authentication. Now, many of you may use a sorry, I'm losing my words here. Most of you may use multi-factor authentication already in your company, either by tokens or by smart cards or chip cards. So this is definitely a way. And again, you can probably definitely see the security benefits from it, or likewise, people that are not using it in their organization have probably used it personally. So things like most mobile banking apps, either on computer or any kind of online banking, would generally use some kind of multi-factor authentication for you to gain access to this. Generally, it would be a password and username, something that you know, and then it will be something that only you have, again, something like a token or sometimes even your phone. So we want to take this methodology, we want to take this process and implement it into our actual applications on-premise. And this will allow this will give you more security over your users, because your users would have to authenticate with not only a password, but a trusted device that is not easily duplicated. In such a case, exactly like a phone, because I have seen most users will not give their phone away, but will give their laptop away to someone internally. So this in itself is a massive security flaw. So if we can use a phone as a secondary authentication mechanism, we can easily get around this. So if a user or if an external attacker, for example, has a user's password, they probably won't have the user's phone. So only that user would be able to give access. Going back into that conversation, to not boil the ocean or anything on it, I mentioned that some companies, predominantly NHS companies, still use the smart card type authentication. While this is multi-factor authentication, the item is still quite physical, and therefore I've seen these cards in the NHS still left into people's keyboards and laptops and whatnot. So because of this, it's a very flawed kind of way, whereas if you look at something like a phone, no one's going to leave their phone on a desk, and generally even a personal phone is going to be PIN protected or password protected. So a phone is definitely a good thing to start on. In terms of what Microsoft have to offer with the Azure Active Directory Premium, multi-factor authentication is very easy to set up. After synchronizing your users into the cloud, it's pretty much a couple of tick boxes. It's a tick box exercise in order to get this implemented and deployed. Not only does this work for cloud apps, such as Office 365 or any apps published in Azure, it can also work on your on-premise IIS-based applications. So you can use it in a hybrid model in order to protect not only your on-premise apps, but also your cloud apps. So definitely something to look at. Now, this is just a feature of Azure Active Directory Premium, but I believe it is a good first step to use to be able to secure your users. In the next slide, while this is not so much securing your users, I thought I would add this in because it's a very quick win. It's pretty much going through the self-service password reset. So a lot of the time, IT and IT support gets bogged down with password resets. I have been there. I have been in first-line support, and generally it's every Monday after everyone's had a nice heavy weekend of drinking, about 8 to 20 users will have forgotten their password. Now, password reset doesn't take too long from a user's perspective. It may take, half an hour to an hour, but still you're talking about you need some resource in IT to be able to go through and reset that password in AD or however your process is. By using the self-service password reset, this delegates the password resets to your employees, so it gives your employees or the users the power to reset their own password. This is generally by logging into a portal that's accessible online, entering in their details, so their username and password for a username, for example, and then it will send them a verification code to their phone, similar to the multi-factor authentication on the last slide, and be able to reset their password. This really does this really does reduce the IT support overhead. It has been seen and it's been proven. I believe I've got a case study for it somewhere, but using this methodology, you're effectively giving control back to your users and making your users more self-sufficient, freeing up IT's time to do the the nitty-gritty, more harder technical type of stuff. So again, not so much on the securing your users piece, but definitely a value add that's worth looking at. The next piece is securing your devices. So how we would look to do that is generally via Intune. So Intune is quite a product in itself, but Intune can manage entire mobile devices, but also the applications within this device. So unlike other mobile device management solutions, it doesn't use the traditional containers or sandboxes. It in fact wraps the application with a mobile application management policy. And from this, you'd be able to control the application by itself, or you'd be able to control the whole device. So Intune effectively can manage the whole device, or you could just use the mobile application management policies without involvement to manage those applications. A couple of questions that I normally hear is can you have different policies for BYOD and corporate devices? Absolutely. So the policies work on, if I remember rightly, it's device collection, so a logical grouping of it. And if you're familiar with SCCM or AD, you can probably visualize that quite easily. But you can have different policies for BYOD and corporate devices. So it makes a good split in terms of if you want some users or most users on corporate devices, but a select few users on BYOD, you can easily differentiate the policies that you can use on those. You can also add in different functionality, such as you can do selective wipes on the devices, handy for BYOD, but you could also do a full wipe on the device for the corporate devices. You can also secure the apps within them. As I said, the apps are wrapped. So in this case, in fact, I'll cover that bit off in a minute in terms of app wrapping. I will go through the enforce in terms of the policies that you can push down, you can enforce a variety of security mechanisms. So you can enforce things like password, pins, encryption of the device, encryption of the SD card. You can start locking down functionality of the device. I'm assuming everyone probably has a good understanding of things like group policy or GPO. It's pretty much GPO for mobile devices. In terms of the application side, you can go a bit more granular in terms of, for example, if I have a BYOD device, so this would be my personal device, and I put corporate applications on it, I can wrap that app to basically say, I don't want any of the copy and paste functionality, especially from the corporate application to personal. This means if I have and I have this on my phone already, if I open my works emails on my phone, I can't copy and paste or screenshot to my actual device or to my personal part of my device. So it allows your personal device to be split profile-wise into corporate and personal. So this is very handy for BYOD type policies. Lastly, in terms of the mobile apps, it's absolutely possible to force mobile app deployment via Intune instead of using the public store. You can also use the application whitelisting and blacklisting features to basically stop users, especially on corporate devices, installing things like Angry Birds or Pokemon Go or, Poker Tournament, whichever ones you want to call. So it does restrict down the devices application-wise, and it also restricts the applications policy-wise of the applications that you want to put in. I think that's enough on Intune for now. So going into the data piece, so this is the Azure RMS, or the Azure Information Protection Service. So this protects your data. This protects your data encryption-wise, but it also allows you to take back control of where your data is and who has access to your data. So what RMS does, or Azure Information Management Service, I think it is. I'm just so used to saying RMS. I've been brought up around that. RMS wraps your data with an encryption. But and when this is normally sent in transit, so when it's being sent to the recipient, you can lock it down to say, okay, I only want this recipient of, say, classified document A to be able to view and read the document, but I don't want them to edit and print the document. Okay, so that user can read and edit the document. That's all I want them to do. It's a classified document. I don't want no one else reading it. If that user tries to forward on that document, that recipient, the no user that's not meant to access it, will not be able to open it. It will only open for the intended recipient. To further that, I, or the administrator, would get an email saying user A, the intended recipient, has sent it to the unattended recipient and they have attempted to open it. So while my data is still being sent around, one, the unintended recipient can't open it, but I also get notified that someone else is sending out sensitive documents when they're not meant to. So this allows me to easily address that issue internally. So this protects several sensitive documents from, again, reaching unattended recipients. Now this generally hooks in with Office very well, so Office Pro Plus, so definitely great for things like Word documents where you would have classified documents, or your Excel documents that would have a list of your payroll or how much I'm paying people or my budgets or anything like that. But it can also be used for anything from PowerPoints. So the Office suite is quite nice. It hooks in nicely with Office 365 as well. Probably, this is probably going to be more on the integration slide, but I'll cover it off now. So Office 365, it covers in nicely for OneDrive for Business, SharePoint, Exchange, so it can protect emails only to their intended recipients. And also on-premise wise, I believe that it can do on-premise file shares, so you can effectively protect these documents so they do not get leaked externally. This is very good to feed back into your data loss protection or DLP type policies. So time to talk about some of the integration points. Now, before we go on to this topic, I just want to re-emphasize that the features in the last slide, so the securing your users, securing your devices, and securing your data pieces, these are only some of the features of Microsoft EM+S. There are quite a bit more. I just chose the top top 3 in this case, or top 4 if you want to include the self-service password reset. The reason for this is I don't want to bore anyone to death by PowerPoint or anything like that, but we'll also go through what the components are. But just wanted to kind of make that clear at this point. But let's talk about more of the integration. So the first step would be the identity piece. So you would generally provision a new Azure Active Directory in the cloud. Some of you who are using Office 365 probably already know this methodology in terms of using Azure AD in the cloud. But for those of you that don't, you'd provision a new Active Directory in the cloud, an Azure AD, and you would be able to start filling this up with users. Now, you can do this process manually. Not recommended, especially if you have an on-premise AD. But what Microsoft do is they provide a tool called AD Connect. Some of you may know it as AD Sync or DIR Sync. It's had a lot of different names, but it's effectively the same thing. AD Connect is the most up-to-date one, and what this does is it takes a copy, or it takes a synchronization of your current Active Directory and synchronizes it to your Azure AD. So you can sync your usernames, your users' usernames and passwords, or just their usernames, but generally usernames and passwords, and users will have the same credentials to log into your cloud services. So things like Office 365, things like Azure, or any of the cloud apps that you have, it will be transparent for users as they'll use their same username and password. It's a very easy thing to set up. Generally with things like the self-service password reset, it will write the password back. So a user would log into Azure AD, which would be the cloud service. They will change their password on the Azure AD, and this would sync back down to your on-premise AD. Now, a couple of you are probably wondering, hang on a second, I don't want my password or password hashes to be stored in Microsoft, probably because I don't trust them or it's not within regulations. In this case, you can set up ADFS, so the Active Directory Federation Services, which will effectively allow you to still synchronize your users up to the Azure Active Directory, but the authentication takes place on your on-premise AD. However, this does include the need for on-premise ADFS servers, so ADFS servers and ADFS proxies. So if I'm going a bit too in detail with it, I'm rambling on, but there are different ways that you can kind of approach the identity mechanisms and get this set up. The key things to pretty much take away is you can take a copy of your AD and push that up to Azure AD, and you can also still have authentication take place on-premise. This is always a good first step. In fact, it is the actual first step to consuming any kind of cloud service. With Office 365, this is required. With Intune, this is required. With Azure RMS, this is required. So this is always the first step into the cloud. Looking more into the Intune integration pieces, so for those of you that are using SCCM, Intune serves as a very, very nice add-on to SCCM. So SCCM generally will manage your Windows, your PC and laptop type devices, while Intune can integrate into SCCM and effectively be used as a distribution point, but it'll be more focused on managing your mobile devices, so Windows phones, iOS, Androids, all of those. Intune will be able to manage these. However, it will still be in the admin console in your SCCM server. So everything will look the same, everything will feel the same, everything's managed from one place. So you can manage everything from your users' laptops and desktops, everything down to their actual mobile devices, iPads, tablet devices, any of those. So this is a very good add-on, and I highly recommend that if you do have SCCM and EM+S and Intune is an interest for you, I would definitely recommend doing the hybrid setup rather than using Intune as a standalone. It offers more functionality, but it also allows you to manage it from the same place. So a couple of points on the Office 365 integration. So again, as we've kind of alliterated through the slides, it would offer the multi-factor authentication service into Office 365 and also allow the self-service password reset to cloud services such as Office 365. However, with EM+S, you would also get advanced security reports. So these are the advanced analytical reports of users trying to sign in or users signing in from suspicious locations. For example, user A has signed in the UK 5 minutes ago, and then 10 minutes later, they've signed in from China or the US or Japan. Obviously, it takes longer than 10 minutes to get to those kind of bits, so this will flag up as someone is attempting to gain access. This will then provide you those security reports of, is these credentials compromised and everything like that. So it's quite a granular security report. I believe that you can put alerts around that to say lock these users down if something like that does happen. Again, it's more about giving you the visibility that these kind of things are happening. In terms of the RMS piece and the information protection piece, so Office 365 does have some built-in information protection. However, RMS will actually, the EMS suite with RMS in it will extend that in terms of giving you email notifications when people have shared documents and when emails have been forwarded when they're not meant to. So again, it gives you that tracking and visibility of what is happening with my data, allowing you to take further control over it. In terms of the Windows 10 piece, so it offers again, it offers to say similar things in terms of the self-service password reset. Also gives you access to things like the Microsoft Identity Manager, and it gives you automatic enrolling and things like certificate, Wi-Fi, VPN, email profiling, provisioning. EMS will also manage EMS, and particularly Intune will manage Windows 10 devices, but only to a certain extent. It's more light management rather than in like very granular GPO policies and things that you would normally be able to accomplish with SCCM. As mentioned on the earlier slide with the SCCM integration, if you do have SCCM, then using this in tandem with EMS and Intune is a very powerful combination. Intune's advantages are always going to be on mobile devices, and SCCM's advantages are always going to be on laptops and desktops. So using both of these together will give you a very strong combination for device management. However, having said that, if you do decide to use Intune standalone, then it can still manage Windows 10 devices, and I believe Windows 8 and 8.1 devices. However, there's a couple of caveats around what kind of functionality you can expect because it will be slightly lighter. The next point, licensing, the bit that everyone's always happy about, and I hope I don't see any people log off after they see the licensing slide because we all have a little bit of licensing. I'm only going to touch on this briefly, but effectively it's going through the different plans that Microsoft have. So Microsoft have released the SPE plans, so the Secure Productive Enterprise Suite. This formerly was, and this is generally on the SPE3, these used to be the ECS suite, so that was the enrollment for cloud services, I believe. So it's effective, if you know this, it's effectively the same setup where you would get EMS, which contains Intune, Azure Active Directory Premium and Rights Management, the pieces that we've been talking about today, as well as Office 365 E3, which contains your standard Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Office Pro Plus, and Skype for Business Online, as well as license and entitlements to Windows 10 Enterprise, obviously with software assurance, that's why it's Enterprise. But Microsoft have decided to kind of advance this out a little bit and offer the SPE E5 plan. So this gives a bit of advanced functionality on the actual licenses. So as you can see, the EMS has been bumped up to the E5 license. The Office 365 has also been bumped up to the E5 license, and the Windows 10 now contains Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. In terms of the EMS side, Intune has been left the same, but Azure Active Directory Premium and Rights Management Service have both been bumped up to P2. And in Office 365, you can see that the PSTN calling and conferencing functionality has been enabled, and that's pretty much the whole PBX in the cloud type piece, which is a little bit of out of scope for this, but it is included on the E5 license as well as Power BI Pro. So for the SPEs, these are effectively the two plans. Again, there's always a lot of confusion around this. It still confuses me, if I'm perfectly honest. Couple of things to note. These are based on user licensing, so you would license it per user rather than per device, because Intune traditionally was per device, and I believe even Windows 10 was licensed per device. These actual SPE plans are per user, which gives some advantages and some disadvantages, of course. It's also worthwhile to note that within these suites, it works out cheaper to buy a suite rather than the individual product, individual components. I think the ratio on the SPE3 is as long as you consume like 4 or 5 of these components, you will generally you'll generally see the cost savings. So for example, if I consume Intune, Azure Active Directory, Premium, Exchange Online, Office Pro Plus, and Windows 10, it will work out a lot more cheaper than taking all of these individually. Again, don't know the commercials off the top of my head. I generally don't do that much licensing, but that's generally how the Microsoft plans work. The more that you take, the more the more cost effective that it is, pretty much. So drilling down a little bit into it, so got a small slide on the EM+S plans. So the EMS E3 contains your Azure Active Directory Premium P1 plan, as well as the Microsoft Intune, which is, there's no advanced plan of Microsoft Intune. Intune is just Intune. And also the Azure Information Protection P1. As you can see, in the E5, these are layered with a little bit more advanced functionality. So you get the identity and access management with the Azure Active Directory P2. So I haven't done too much research into it, but from what I do know is, and one of the good features of it is you can discover, restrict, and monitor administrators, so people that generally have admin passwords, and provide the just-in-time access kind of methodology. So when an administrator does need certain access, you can provide this within a set time scale of when they need it, and then revoke that access. At the end of the day, users are quite dangerous if they have admin credentials, and admins generally have admin credentials and can be quite dangerous. Not to say that anyone's going to be malicious, but generally if someone with admin credentials has decides to go a bit rogue, then it's pretty much game over. Likewise, if a hacker or cracker or whatever you want to call an exploiter, whatever you want to call them, manages to gain access to an administrator's credentials, then again, it's going to spell bad news for any kind of business. But if you implement this kind of methodology where admin access is given and then taken as and when needed, it pretty much gives you a bit more peace of mind, as if these credentials are compromised, the damage is going to be minimal, less than normal. As for the Azure Active Directory plans, so generally the EMS E3 license contains the Premium P1, whereas the EMS E5 license contains the Premium P2. Bear in mind, depending on what level you are, it contains the level behind it. So for example, Premium 1 contains the basic features and the free features. It's not just completely independent. So if you are using Office 365 at the minute, then you are more than likely on the free version. This obviously offers you the standard set of things like a single sign-on, so that's through ADFS for your users, your AD Connect and synchronization, which we've gone through, and also on the free version, I know that it's listed here as self-service password reset for cloud users. This should actually be changed. It's for administrators. So if you are an admin on Office 365, you can actually use multi-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication and self-service password reset for administrators for free. If you want that for your users, then you're looking at the Premium P1, which is the self-service password reset with the on-premise write-back for your users, as well as the multi-factor authentication. As for the P2 features, you get the advanced identity protection, which is the admin piece, but also the admin piece is the privileged identity management. We also get advanced identity protection features as well. So this is a good overview to see what's on each Azure Active Directory plan. And I don't generally class in the basic that much because not a lot of people use the basic one. It's generally free or Premium 1 that I've seen as the two most common. Premium 1 does offer quite a couple of rich features, while Premium 2 does pretty much bump that up quite a bit more. So just going to run through a couple of next steps in terms of what you can do and pretty much close off this conversation. So I'd say next steps, if you don't already have EMS, you can try it for free. Simply Google search it or Bing search it or Yahoo search it, whichever one's your kind of preference, but you can get a free trial of EMS. It can hook into your Office 365 if you already have it, so I definitely recommend doing it. You get, I think, 25 licenses for 30 days, so enough time to kind of run a little bit of a proof of concept or some testing. The next two steps that I generally recommend to almost anyone considering this is, whether this is before or after the POC is available, but you want to align EM+S to your business needs. So does it make sense to have this in your business? Does your business require this? Can you visualize this in your business and to see what return or value that you're going to get in your business? Second from that is designing EM+S to your technical needs. So what are your technical needs? Do you need to secure your users? Do you need to secure your devices? Do you need to secure your data? Do you need to do all of them? Do these tick your boxes? I believe these exercises are always very important in terms of finding out where you are and where you want to be, and the middle ground is pretty much how are we going to get you there. For anyone that is unfamiliar with doing any of these, then there is obviously options such as utilizing Microsoft DPS vouchers for Power On and Bytes to run a POC pilot, or even design for EM+S, or even things like System Center. So to not go into it to too much detail, you can use different unit vouchers. They will generally get you anything from a pilot to what we call a solution alignment, which allows you to envision and align these technologies to your actual needs, as well as doing things like knowledge transfer to pretty much help you out and assist you with using the actual product. So I suppose that's pretty much it from me. So I mean, if you do have any more questions or want to oh yeah, sorry, I think we've got yeah, FAQs and questions is just after. If there is any questions, then if you do want to contact us and speak more about this, then please speak to your Bytes account manager, or you can alternatively email tellmemore@bytes.co.uk. My contact details are also on screen, which I'll pull up in a minute, but I suppose we'll set a little bit of time aside for the frequently asked questions and some questions that we're getting through. So the first question that I got is, are all applications able to be policy wrapped, or is it a limited set of approved apps only? So there is a list of, I'd say, apps that can be done that are like Microsoft approved. That's not to say that all applications can't be done. Generally with applications that have been, say, developed in-house, you can, I think you can download the Intune SDK and pretty much bake this into the application code and then customize it so it allows you to manage it. All applications able to be policy wrapped, is it a limited set of approved apps only? So I mean, again, just to re-emphasize on that, Azure has a lot of cloud-only apps in their gallery, so there is a lot of supported apps. Again, it's just with the non-supported apps, you might have to tweak it around to make it to work. Again, it's a bit of a discovery exercise, or again, if it's your own in-house developed apps, then you can integrate in the SDKs. Next question is as I understand it, old ECS bought against an EA gave us everything available. Are we going to miss out on anything while we are ECS? When we come to renew our EA, we don't require Cloud PBX. What will be migrate to and what we will miss out on? So if you're already on ECS, ECS is practically the equivalent of the SPE E3, so you're not going to miss out on anything. If you don't require the PBX, then you just don't need to go to the E5 model, pretty much. So yeah, what you would migrate to would be the SPE E3, I believe. Can Intune manage a non-domain joined Windows 10 laptop? Yes, it can. You just have to manually push the actual Intune agent to the laptop. So obviously with domain joined laptops, you generally push this out by GPO or System Center. For workplace laptops, you literally just push the agent to the laptop, then you can start managing it. The different things that you can look to manage from that would be application management, real-time monitoring, endpoint protection, firewall settings and firewall settings management, hardware and software inventory, and even remote control through the remote assistance requests. You can also do things like software update settings. I believe it's a little bit more limited to WSUS, and compliance settings reporting. I'd say most of the time it's recommended to use something like System Center or GPO, but for non-domain joined Windows 10, for non-domain joined computers, Intune can be used for the light management if it's a BYOD type scenario. Next question is, just to confirm, can I set up AD Sync with Office 365 without setting up ADFS? You certainly can. ADFS is literally just for if you want the authentication to take place on-premise. rather than in Office 365. So generally what you would do is you would set up AD Sync and you would synchronize up your users and optionally passwords. Unless you want to provide passwords to all your users again, you would generally just sync the passwords, they can sign in with that. If you don't want Microsoft to hold your passwords, then you would literally put in the ADFS system and this will route back the request back to your on-premise. Well, that's it for now, guys. As I'm conscious I didn't want to overrun with time. I hope you all enjoyed the session. If we could, I think there's a feedback kind of form that gets sent out afterwards. So if you guys would kindly fill that in. If there is any further questions following this session, then please feel free to reach out to your Bytes account manager or the contacts that I've left on the other page. So I think if you want to note down the email addresses from here, feel free to ping me an email or the shared mailbox an email, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. But have a great day, guys. Thank you very much.